Greetings. My name is Frank Salter, and I'm here tonight with Harry Richardson, President of the British Australian Community, and Eric Louw, Professor Eric Louw, late of University of Queensland, where he was teaching political communications. Now, tonight we're going to be discussing the upcoming American election. It's 2 days before the election, and I was watching various mainstream media reports on it, and they were not mentioning any of the strategic or demographic matters that I expected to hear from serious media commentators. So I thought we'd do our own little session. With one writer, as an Anglo Australian, I want to know primarily what are the implications for my nation and for my people, and I'd extend that also to the Anglosphere. So in this discussion tonight, we'll be circling around that topic. What are the implications for us and for our kindred peoples overseas? Now, I'll just start off with about 30 seconds on my concern. What the commentators, and I'm referring to the ABC Insiders program, ABC Television Insiders program, broadcasting from Detroit, by the way, and they were talking about how close the election would be, that the polling was indicating a very close election, without mentioning at all the background causes of that, which is demographic change. So in one state after another over the last 30 years, Republicans have lost mainstream states. For example, they're on the brink in Texas. Texas is getting close. Texas has always been a major state voting Republican, as was California. California was once a solid red state. And what has changed that is third world immigration. So immigrants coming in, not just third world, people from successful East Asian countries, for example, vote Democrat. Especially Hispanics and other third worlders coming in will vote Democrat. And this is known. So that's the sort of factor that I want to hear in just any humdrum analysis. So look, I'll hand over now. Harry, would you like to make an opening statement?
All right. Well, it's we're told it's a cliffhanger. I think that the only cliffhanger, personally, is whether, and maybe I'm wrong here, but whether the Democrats are going to be able to cheat enough, because my gut feeling is that this isn't even close. This is the weakest team that I've ever seen as a team going in for the presidential election. Harris and Waltz are just a disaster. Like Harris herself, she's been basically in power for nearly 4 years. She can't run on a record because her record has been appalling. There's not a single thing you can point to that's been anything but a disaster that she's done. And then on top of that, you've got Waltz, who's also a complete disaster. He's best known for putting tampons in boys' bathrooms. That might appeal to a small sector of the population, but like I said, it'd be a pretty small sector. And then they're up against Trump, who has a proven record with 4 years in power, at the end of which he ran for re-election and got more votes than any president ever in history. And the only person that ever beat him was Joe Biden at the same time, who'd spent the last 3 months in his basement not campaigning. So it was, it's contested. But if you look at the numbers, there was actually more people voted than there were actual voters. Like if you add up Joe Biden's total number of something 88 million or something, and Donald Trump's the amount of votes that Donald Trump got, and you look at the number of registered voters in America, there was actually more people voted than there were registered voters. How does that work? And we're pretty sure we don't get 100% turnout in even in a US presidential election, it's not mandatory voting. So, so what's going on? So, if you look at and if you can't, Harris can't run on her record because that's appalling. Normally what people do is try and run on the personality, but she can't run on her personality either because she hasn't got one, and neither is Tim Walz. They're the most appalling candidates you can imagine. If you look back to the record, that she's basically tied herself to Biden. She was asked on TV on a primetime channel, what would you have done different? And she said, "Oh, I can't think of a single thing." Well, if you look back at the record, there was the disaster in Afghanistan, there was Hawaii, North Carolina more recently, there was the East Palestine. All these are localized things, but these are, people in Hawaii are not going to forget the disaster and the way that the reaction came, which was virtually no help at all. Same with North Carolina. The border security was Trump's strong point. We all think he could have done better, built more wall, but he did what he could to build wall. He was building wall as fast as he could, or as fast as he claimed to be as fast as he could. He built more wall than any other president in history, to his credit. Kamala and Biden came in, and day one, the first thing that they did was to with a stroke of a pen, no more wall building. That came to a screeching halt on day one. Now, if you're doing something on day one, that's the major priority for your administration. It's like, we're going to stop that wall. And immediately they seem to have facilitated as best they could a massive invasion of illegal migrants, let alone legal ones. So there was a huge pouring over the border of these illegal migrants who they then bust around the country into swing states. So that was disaster. And that was Harris's particular, her actual mandate. She was the border czar. She was given the job as border czar. That was what they put. Then there's the economy. Inflation's doubled. The prices have doubled. Inflation's been running in huge amounts, and probably much more than the government lets on. For the average person, they've seen prices just go through the roof. That's not ever a good thing for people. I mean, everyone's poorer because of it. There's the Israel-Hamas disaster. One thing that you can, no matter who you talk to, people have to admit that Trump never started a stupid war. Now, once Biden got in, you got Russia invading Ukraine, you got China rattling sabers over Taiwan, and then Hamas and Iran and Israel. Trump had actually negotiated a peace between Israel and the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. Biden and Harris come in. Next thing, we've got a Middle East war that threatens to turn into World War III. So, and that has really upset both sides of the aisle. It's upset the Islamic side. There was apparently the Somali communities come out for Trump just in the last day or so, and it's upset the Jewish side, who are very powerful in American politics. So that was a great foot in the mouth. There's been assassination attempts on Trump, like the assassination attempts with him jumping back up and yelling, "Fight, fight, fight." That was a big thing. That's a hell of a thing for a lot of people, especially young men. They saw that. That wasn't staged. You can't stage something like that. So that was a big thing, I think, for a lot of people. And then don't discount Peanut the squirrel. Did you hear about Peanut the squirrel? I mean, there was a guy who got a pet squirrel, and he found it. The mother died, and he raised it from being a little baby. Grew up with him. He videotaped himself, had it on the internet. Like he had a following of all these people with him and his Peanut the squirrels sitting looking out the window. Just the other day, this was in New York State. Just the other day, the state government turned up, took Peanut off him, and took it away and killed it. They just killed it. It was like, "Oh no, you're breaking Rule 702 for XYZ," and so this went viral across the internet. I mean, things like this. We're talking things that appeal to the Kamala's demographic, which is young, white, liberal females who are concerned about the environment and really feel strongly about little squirrels. Things like that can tip people. And it's not so much with all these things, are these Kamala voters going to vote for Trump? They're not. But the question is, are they actually going to turn out for Kamala? And I mean, can anyone give me a reason to vote for Kamala other than she's not Trump? Because this is the entire basis of the campaign is I'm not Trump. And if you vote for Trump, he's going to be, a dictator. He's going to be this, that, and the other. And they've done a pretty good job of convincing people of that. They've turned the propaganda up to 11 on that one. But I don't know if it's enough to convince people. I mean, people have already seen Trump in there for 4 years. To suddenly claim that he's going to be a dictator. I think even in the heart of hearts, even the firmest Kamala fans are going to be kind of dubious with that. So for lots of reasons, I think Trump should be a shoo-in for this. But, will the Democrats cheat? Absolutely. Will they be able to cheat enough to swing it? I'm not sure. I think that's the cliffhanger. So we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Eric, would you like to make an initial statement?
Yeah, okay. I guess for me, the key issue here is that the election, I think the election is actually existential. And I think it's existential in a sense for both. It's that female demographic that Harry was talking about. There's been this feminization of society taking place. And that is also coupled with the change in the demographics that Frank was talking about. It's the combination of both of those. I mean, if you look at the constituency that the Democrats are hunting for, it's that curious mix of the female votes, the feminist votes, but the feminists not feminists now. It's they've got the whole girly vote with them. They've kind of said, we are going to feminize society. Plus, they try to change the demographics through migration. And it's clear they've been doing that for a long time and have been very successful. For that constituency, having Trump in is existentially terrifying for them. I mean, they see this as, Hitler's coming. I mean, they really have been told that, and they believe it. He's going to kind of become this autocrat. He's going to put us all in concentration camps or something bizarre. I mean, it's extraordinary how they are terrified. But of course, I mean, on our team, I'm on the Trump team, it's also existential because you kind of go, if the Democrats win, for me, the most terrifying thing is that I think the borders will be left open, if not opened more. And if you're going to have this flood of third world people in the future, the Democrats will just permanently win forever because they will have changed the demographics so much. Now, the other way they're changing the demographics is because of that girly vote, women are not making babies anymore. That literally changes everything. So American policy means we don't have it's an anti-family society. It's an anti-marriage. It's an anti-child family, which is why Anglo-Americans are not reproducing themselves anymore. And as soon as you don't reproduce yourselves, you have to top up with people from somewhere else. Now, if the Democrats come in, that will permanently change American society potentially within 5 years, so that you can't win in the future. So funnily enough, it's existential for both sides. That's a worry for America because I'm not sure that either side will accept the other side winning now. It's got to that stage. So, yeah.
Interesting. If I could make a comment on that demographic aspect, some estimates are that there are 30 million illegal immigrants in America, plus the 1 to 2 million per year that have been ticking in legally, which adds up over a period of time. Now, Trump has promised the largest repatriation program that America has ever seen. So he's obviously cognizant of both how the frustration felt by Middle America, Republican voters, and also his own needs as political survival. I'm not convinced he's going to follow through, but I'm watching with hope. America is within its rights to to kick these people out. They've broken into the country illegally, and I hope he'll follow that up. Does either of you have an opinion on that?
Well, I think I agree with you. I'm concerned that he might not do it. Or put it this way: it's not about that he won't do it, but I think that the swamp is real. The bureaucracy are against Trump and for the Democrats. And the greatest catastrophe we have now is that I think you saw that last time. Trump had difficulty getting a lot of his policies up because the bureaucrats just go, we're not going to implement that, dude. And there's literally nothing you can do. If the Washington blob goes no, it's no. Now, I suspect that there's going to be that kind of pushback. I think Trump knows he has to do something about the demographics. But in a sense, that demographic change is existential for the Democrats. They have to bring it about. They want to bring it about. And all those bureaucrats think it's a great idea. So I watch with interest as well. I mean, if Trump can get that right, if he can actually not just say he's going to do it, but somehow get the machine to do it for him, not only is it good for America, but it's good for the world, because I would say that Europe will then follow suit. America sets the pace. And if America can do repatriation, there's no question in my mind that Europe will end up doing the same thing.
Well, I agree with Eric. It's going to be very difficult. The swamp's definitely going to push back like hell. The only thing I can say is if anyone can do it, if there's one person on the planet that can do it, I'd say it would be Trump. I can't think of anyone else that would be more likely. When he first went to, in his defense, when he first went to Washington, that was his first time in Washington. He knew no one, and he didn't know anything or anyone or where, what was going to happen or anything like that. It'll be very different this time. He's going in, he knows people. There's a lot of people who are going to be trying to support him. I'll be hoping that this time he has a better judgment with some of them. Like last time was very disappointing that he got rid of one of his main people, Steve Bannon, who was just completely loyal to him and still to this day loyal to him, and picked up his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who said, "Oh yeah, I don't like Steve Bannon. Get rid of him." Steve Bannon was the guy who'd really got him into power, and he takes the word of his son-in-law. That was disastrous. Now, I don't know how much he'll have learned. I think he's learned a bit. I think he's a smart character. I think we all agree he's a smart character. He should have learned. There's a lot of people around that will want to help him this time, who hopefully will have more idea of who he can trust. I mean, last time I felt for him because whatever he did, as Eric said, you'd get this diplomat or bureaucrat and say, "I want this done," and they go off, "Yeah, I'll go and get that done," and they just wouldn't do it. They do the opposite. There was some of these people he had around him, Rob Rosen and Bill Barr and all these people. He had the general, was it General Milley, who was the general, who calls up the Chinese and said, "Listen, if Trump orders an attack, don't worry about it because I won't follow his orders." I mean, how this guy's still walking around free is beyond me, So hopefully, Trump will go on an absolute rampage. Now, a couple of the people he's picked, I mean, I've got to say I'm impressed with some of his picks. Like he's got Elon Musk there. The most impressive pick was J.D. Vance. I think J.D. Vance is superb. I think he's the best vice presidential pick I've seen in the last 50 years. I can't think of anyone else who's been picked as a vice president who's been anything close. Because normally presidents pick someone who's not gonna come even close to overshadowing them. I think it's done deliberately. I've been told it was done deliberately. And Trump's turned around and said, "No, I'm going to pick someone who's a real performer." And he's picked out a star there. I mean, he's got Elon Musk on side. He's got RFK Jr. on side. Tulsi Gabbard, what's her name? Tulsi Gabbard? Is it Gabbard? Terrible pronouncing these things. So I think he's attracting and has attracted a number of high profile and very competent people who are, there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of bureaucrats, like, as Eric said, they agree that the swamps, they think that what the swamp's doing is great. They're fully on board. But there's a lot of people who are not. There's a lot of people who really don't like what's happening and are not in a position to speak up. In a second Trump term, if he plays his cards right, I think that he could pick up a lot of those people and motivate them and get things done. I'm being optimistic there because I always have to be optimistic, because if you're going to fight, you have to be an optimist. Let's hope that that's what happens. That's what's happened. That is what happens. I don't know, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed and I'm touching wood right here. So let's hope. Like as Eric said, if we go down on this election, I think this is existential for the whole planet. You know, I think it's the end of America, and the end of America. Australia is basically an outpost of the American empire, and so it's going to be bad news, very bad news for us. I think very bad news for lots of other countries, including lots of the. You know, I don't think it'll benefit people. You know, people say, "Oh, well, it'd be good for China." I'm not so sure it'd be good for the Chinese people. You know, I'm not so sure. I think there's a lot of countries around the world who, you know, they'll bag out Uncle Sam and complain this and that. If America goes down, all those sea routes that they keep open are going to go down. You know, world trade's going to collapse. There's going to be hunger and all sorts of things. So I'm thinking this is really important that we get Trump over the line. God help us if we don't.
I'd like us to discuss the implications for Australia and for the world presently, but I just wanted to follow up both of your point about the domestic scene in the United States, and I just wanted to bring in this theme of division. That I've never seen division so bitter, so deep. People, Trump derangement syndrome is just the tip of the iceberg. People feel so strongly. General Milley, for example, treating Trump as an aberration. You know, the example of Harry you just gave is quite extraordinary. But what's happening actually is completely consistent with research on the social impact of diversity, ethno-religious diversity. And America is falling apart. It's showing those same fracture lines that the Soviet Union showed. And the question is, so this, within that framework of growing diversity, which is partly due to Democratic Party strategy to swamp the white vote, basically. But the side effect is this growing catastrophe of division. America is not a country anymore. It always had strong regional identities. Of course, there was some class differences, and there were some and so on. There was city and country, the classic division, city and country and regional differences. But now that situation has become much more extreme, so that we have people becoming hysterical about Trump, when in fact Trump is a moderate. In fact, he's an economic nationalist. He's not an explicit ethno-nationalist at all. He doesn't even hint at it. The strongest he came was during his first term, when he began talking about Western civilization and it being under threat in the United States. But he moved away from that, and so I think we need to keep an eye on that. Following this election, how does it play into the resolution, one way or the other, of this division, these deep divisions within the United States? Does either of you have a comment on that?
Well, I think Trump's great crime, as far as the establishment's concerned, is that he does. You know, he's not you certainly wouldn't call him an ethno-nationalist, but he doesn't hate white people. He doesn't actually I just saw an interview from a couple of days ago. There was this guy Fetterman. He was famous. He's a senator, I think. He had a stroke and still managed to get himself elected a couple of days after having a stroke, when he could barely speak. He was talking. He went on Joe Rogan's podcast, and Joe was pushing him on exactly these issues of demographic replacement. And at the end he was saying, yes, well, you know, I mean, Texas, yes, there definitely demographic replacements happening. People are being pushed out. It's turning it's turning Democrat, and that he's basically saying that, paraphrasing here, that the population was being replaced, and that's a good thing. He said that's a good thing. I think that's good. Now, to me, the question that Joe Rogan should have said was, well, if it's good, then obviously you think that the people coming in are better than the people that are here already. That must be your opinion, that we're replacing a substandard population with a much better population. So these illegal migrants, many of whom are criminal. There's countries that are, South American countries, emptying jails and lunatic asylums and sending them over the border. And this guy thinks that these are better than the ordinary Anglo-Americans. And I think this is actually a fairly commonly held view amongst these elite, Democrat and general Western leftists. It's like, well, yeah, things will be better when we get rid of a lot of these white people and get people out of power. It's all going to be far, far improved. They genuinely think that. I think part of the problem is that often when we first started to get, and even now, you get people come from Asian countries and things. And my daughter said this to me the other day. She said they're actually more cultured than a lot of the lesser, the lower socioeconomic groups here. And I said, yeah, but this is because what you're getting are the top tier of migrants from Asian countries. So you're getting the most cultured, well-educated, intelligent people, and they come in and compared to someone who's a bricklayer from Logan or Blacktown, they might seem really decent and cultured. I think a lot of people have fallen for this. They think, oh, if we just open the doors and obviously all these people are like that. They seem to think so. They open the doors and then suddenly people are eating your dogs and cats, as Trump said. It's not always like that. So I think that's one of the problems we have. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think you've got to look at it literally is a story that has been sold. The elite has sold a story to what is now, I don't know, it seems like 45% or so of the population believe this stuff. And it's not so much that they think the third world guys are better, it's that they think the old establishment are so awful. And if you listen to what they're saying, if you listen to the message that they say, it really all comes down to white men are bad. I mean, that lies at the very heart of what they've been saying.
Pale, stale, and male.
That's why Trump was so successful, because Trump pressed the button. Because it got to the point where no one would contradict this story. No one would say, "What are you saying?" And Trump was the first person who got up on the media and said things that nobody else would say. And people went, well, if he can say it, I can say it. And it was like, it was liberating. It literally was liberating. But the demographics of it are that we know Trump has got what? He's definitely got 40% of the population in the bag. But the way the system works, you've got to have 50%. Therein is the issue. So you've got to play this other peculiar game to get the other 10%. And that seems to be what he's doing now.
Yeah, that rings true. It seems to me, I'll just raise the question: what will strong Republican voters, say 30 to 40% of the population, at least, how will they behave once it becomes clear they can never win government again?
Yep.
Once they're a permanent minority
Yep.
in the Congress and the presidency, and I think that will contribute to what's happening already, which is some states wanting to split themselves in half. There's a movement, for example, to split away Northern California from Southern, which is heavily Hispanic. Other states want to merge. Regions of states want to merge, split away and merge with other states. This is sort of the beginning of secession. And I think these are serious people. These are the people who pioneered America. Their ancestors pioneered America. if you look at a map, a political map of the United States, it's mostly red. It's mostly Republican, with the blue parts on the two coasts and major cities, Michigan and so on, in Detroit and so on. So much of the country is still old America. White America with about a 10-13% black minority, as it was from the beginning almost. So I think this is a very important election. If Trump gets in, I think he will reclaim people's optimism and loyalty for 4 years. So at least that would happen. But I think if Harris gets in, Harris is a complete slave of her advisors. She has no original thoughts, as far as I can see. And so she will, and these people are on the same page. They want to displace the white Anglo population. They want to make a permanent majority for the Democratic Party. And I think we're going to see ugly things ahead for America.
I mean, I think if Trump, you see, my optimism comes from if Trump wins, it's that thing that was you guys said earlier about Vance. I think he's the future. I mean, he is the most amazing. You can just see his presidential material, and I think that is what Trump would set up, is the future through that. There is a pathway to fixing America with the two of them. And that's why it's so important that they get up now. Because if they don't get up now, it's the Democrats will go, we can never let those guys get up. Now we're going to change the demographics forever, and we're going to lock it down so that they can never come in. And they really could pull it off. But then, as you say, that could actually see the country break apart. But if the country breaks apart, then that really doesn't help any of us. Because if America does break apart, and I think there's actually an extremely good possibility of that. If America falls to pieces, it affects the entire world. We really do end up with China then. It's as bad as that. I mean, China will win that one for sure.
Yeah. So check your social credit score.
If America falls apart, the question is, who gets the nuclear weapons? Questions such as that. Who gets the industrial capacity? And
who gets the debt?
And part of the problem is that, the reddest of the states, the most conservative states, often have radical capitals. So for example, Oregon.
Yep.
The state capital was the site of some of the worst Trotskyist Antifa type riots and so on. But the people themselves in the countryside, in the hinterland, are quite conservative, and that's the case also, I believe, in Washington State, which is the state just above California. So the elites there, this is an extension of Silicon Valley. I mean, there's a high-tech industry, what is the capital there? It's
Seattle.
Capital city.
Oh, it's not actually Seattle. It's
Seattle, I think. I think it's Seattle.
It's some little town. Can't remember the name.
And it's quite radical, but the hinterland is really red.
Seattle is quite radical. Seattle is a radical.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the other issue, is that if you look at the map, both coastlines would go Democrat. So the center stays red, but the coastlines go blue. And of course, that impacts on the whole issue of America having the Navy, which protects the sea lanes. It just messes everything up completely if it pulls apart.
The problem for Australia is stark, it seems to me. So Britain is gone as our protector in World War II when Singapore was lost. That ruled them out. So we have the United States, and they were seen, and they were blood brothers So they were a kindred ethnic group, kindred nation, both based on British settlements, and the most powerful industrial country in the world. And if they're withdrawn, we're subject to even Indonesia, with over 200 million people, is a sizable potential threat. India is a potential threat. The Indian Ocean is not that large, and China as well. So we have a lot at stake. And again, I don't hear this being discussed in the mainstream media. The implications to Australia, if you have a permanent democratic presidency in Congress in the United States, the implications for Australia are grim, because these people don't care about the West, actually. I don't think they have the same instinct.
But what they do
for,
care about is globalism. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really the great cleavage, is between people who care about the identity of their country, their nation, and the globalists who really do want a global government. And the Democrats are globalists. There's no question they're globalists. And you hear that in Australia. You hear the elite in Australia are globalists as well. And the elite in Britain are now globalists, and the Europeans are globalists. So the elites tend to be globalists, and they go, no, we don't want this Trump guy. He's going to get in the way of our globalism. They think the solution is globalism, whereas for me, it's a catastrophe.
Yeah. And it's this mentality that comes up with slogans such as "diversity is our greatest strength," when
Because it's
all the academic research goes, and common sense goes in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
It's a disaster.
Well, you see, globalism wants multiculturalism because it's like we have the whole world in America. I mean, that's what they really think is a great idea. America looks like the whole world, and that literally is their policy.
Yeah. It's a very important election. Certainly.
It is.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Does anyone want to make a prediction? I'm picking a Trump landslide.
Well, one might hope so. I think the other team. I think if Trump wins, the other team are not going to go quietly.
Whichever team wins, I don't think.
Well, that's true. That's true. But I mean, I think the left will go berserk.
Yeah, I do.
They'll be on
I
the
agree.
streets. They'll be on the streets.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there's a downside to Trump winning, if I can throw a grenade into the conversation. The downside is that notice that he's taken up an elite Republican strategy of trying to win over minorities. So they've taken great comfort in the black vote. Young black men want to vote for Trump. They don't want to vote for Harris. The number of Hispanics who favor Trump is tremendous, especially Hispanic men. So it's instead of winning 75%, the Democrats might only win 50%. Those are important moves. Instead of 95%, 90% voting of blacks voting Trump, with only voting for Harris, if instead it falls to 70% or 60%, that's huge. That's huge. The danger is that Trump and more importantly Vance and others in the leadership will draw the lesson. So we should keep trying to appeal to minorities, and I think that's fundamentally a bad strategy. The strategy should be, in my view, to try and beef up the white vote. Of course, one is conciliatory to all Americans, and one should appeal to votes from everywhere. But what's missing from American politics and from American political culture is overt, realistic ethnic talk.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I would agree with you. The problem is, first of all, I think the demographic shift has actually already gone too far. I think they have already imported so much of the third world that Anglo nation, you literally have to get all Anglos to vote on the same team, which is exactly what happened. As you know, I've done work on South Africa. That is exactly what they did there. They said, if we can get the whole ethnicity to vote for us, we're in. The problem is the gender thing now. The gender thing is so real that white women will just not vote for Trump now. I mean, well, no, some will, but huge blocks of them, huge blocks of white women are globalists. They literally want to change everything. And I don't think Trump can get those guys back. He cannot get those globalist women back.
I'm talking way beyond Trump.
Oh, no, sure. In the
Trump
future.
has special problems with women.
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't think it's Trump. I think it's actually, it's something much more profound. We're seeing the feminization of society. That's literally what they're doing. And the Democrat Party has been doing it for some time, and they've pulled it off. And you see that cleavage running right through the white demographic now. And see, that is why Black men and Hispanic men are voting for Trump. They feel just as threatened by this whole feminist girly thing. It threatens them because they literally are saying women should get the jobs. They want to create a matriarchy. They are literally trying to create a matriarchy.
I think without even the talking about feminization of society, I think that the brainwashing that's been applied has been, successful with a lot of men, but it's been especially successful with women. Women have been particularly susceptible to it. And that's why, like, as you say, I can imagine, there is obviously a large block, especially of the more radical women who have a real problem with Trump. There's lots of women who think Trump's great and always were and always will. But obviously he's made some mistakes. He comes across, and he's obviously portrayed to women as this monster and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, he's a very masculine guy. So a lot of women appreciate that. And like, as Eric said, I think, if Trump dropped out and Vance stepped into his shoes, it would be the same thing, that there's this globalist, talk of, we've got to save the environment, save this, save that. If the Republicans get in, the pure evil, white. A lot of them bought into this thing of white men are just evil. They've been taught that, and they just seem particularly susceptible to this line of brainwashing. So, I agree with Eric. It's going to be very difficult to get those women back.
Anti-tradition. They are anti a traditional Western society. They see that as what you want to change, and you change it by feminizing it. And that's why it's an urban phenomenon. Well, I was to say, and you change all the cities. That's why if you just look at a map, it happens in the urban areas, and these huge mega cities. They've just changed the whole way those people see the world. That means they're almost not Americans anymore. They don't want to be Americans. They want to be globalists running a global empire from those big cities. That is what they want to do. And I don't know how you change that. Their minds don't see the world like that anymore. And of course, it's not just in America; it's spilled over into Europe.
I see part of that feminist shift that you refer to as the result of power, power and prestige and status, and that's what you find the Democrats control. They overwhelmingly control the mass media. It's Hollywood, and so on.
Exactly.
So that is impressive, I think, to people in general, but especially women. And I think I agree that there are challenges such as that. But what for me is imperative to bring into politics in Australia as well is overt ethnic talk. I'm not suggesting, well, for example, if you look at the asymmetry that currently exists, minorities talk in overt, explicit ethnic terms. We've got to get out the vote. 95% black votes for candidates that they choose. They talk openly. Other minorities do the same. They'll say Jews would be crazy to vote for this person and not for that person, and Hispanics do the same. is only one group that is not allowed to talk in explicit
Exactly.
terms, and that's
Mm.
white Americans and white,
That's
white
the game.
Australians.
You've just
That
put your
has to
finger on that.
change.
You've just put your finger on that.
That's what they've
That,
done.
that has to change. And
Mm.
I admit there are huge obstacles, of course, but
Hmm.
we don't even get to stage one until we start talking overtly about those things. That's all I'm
We
all
need
I'm
an
saying.
No, I agree.
organisation.
I think what we have to do is to attack that. We've actually got to expose what they're doing.
Yep.
There's actually a really good book that's just come out. I highly recommend it. It's by a guy called Eric Kaufman. He's a Canadian, and it's called Taboo. And it's brilliant. He's nailed it. He traces it all back to the mid '60s in America, when he says you put two things together: the civil rights movement and feminism, and they meet in universities and they produce all the stuff we've been talking about, which says white guys are bad and all the minorities are good. And they persuaded everybody of that. And he just shows how it's like a virus. It's spilled over into the world. So now we're not going to change that till we tackle it. We've got to actually highlight it. We've got to say, guys,
Yeah.
they're lying to you. Look what they say. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
Rather than
Yeah.
go silent when they do it.
Yeah. Well,
And
this
I
is the
noticed
remit of the British Australian community,
Mm.
and that's
this
our
is
core
not-
mission.
Exactly. And what you're saying, Eric, is precisely what mainstream conservatives, establishment conservatives, do not do. They never do it.
I
They
agree.
never burrow down and tackle philosophical and scientific matters, for example, and just deal with it. And very superficial for some reason.
It's got to do, I think, with the two-party system. I think the two-party system produces weak leaders. It produces weak politicians who get trapped in that game that you were talking about. Because they constantly have to go, how do we get those middle guys in the middle, the undecided voters, who actually don't give a damn? I mean, they usually are the voters who don't care. And yet you've got to get them to vote for you, otherwise you don't come in. So all the effort is put onto that doing that, which is nutty.
It's my impression that's true, but also there's media monopoly.
Mm.
So since World War II, there's been a growing monopoly, basically, a monoculture in the media. There was not, for example, apart from Walt Disney to a minor extent, there was not a Hollywood studio that was a conservative standout. They were all in the same sort of Democrat range. The same thing went with the three studios, the three television studios, for example.
In America.
Initially, there were three in the United States. And this has bled over to the rest of the Anglosphere.
Huh?
And conservative politicians might be cowards, but they're not stupid. And it's proven impossible for them to stand against this cultural pressure.
Mm.
I think this is a factor.
Well, guys, we've got to, I think, a 1 hour point. Maybe we should wrap it up, do you think?
So but by the way, I'm making no prediction. I just don't know. The variables are too many. The Democrats can cheat. I think, but my own feeling how I would vote Trump, mainly because he's not Harris.
Yes.
I see him as a valuable wrecking ball, smashing in all directions, and therefore valuable because the deep state needs smashing up.
Yeah.
So we've got and you I think you're hopeful, Eric, and Harry,
I'm optimistic, but then I'm an optimist. So because if you're going to fight, you have to be an optimist. So that's why I don't allow myself pessimism. It's
good.
I think
you
Trump,
get more
I think Trump will
disappointment.
get across the line.
What was that, Eric?
I think Trump will get across the line. I'm hoping he will, and I just think he will, because I just think there's enough people now who have seen the light as to what the other team are doing. I really do think there's enough now.
I agree.
Okay.
I
On
agree.
that
I
note,
don't.
shall we finish?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for having me on, Frank and Eric. Thanks for
Yeah,
coming
great.
along.
Thanks very much, gentlemen. I'll stop it now. Thanks very much.